Hi, I'm Rob from robandphoto.com, and today we're going to be looking at the Yongnuo YN560 Mark I flash or Speedlite. Yongnuo, well known for making budget entry-level strobes, and if you want to get into the realms of off-camera flash, then Yongnuo are probably one of the brands that, if you're on a budget like me, that you're going to really want to have a go with. So the idea is that normally, as you well know, if we're shooting with our cameras, if it gets a little bit dark, we're shooting inside, we use the pop-up flash. The problem with that is the fact that it produces very flat images, you can get lots of red eye, and the flash is just above the lens. And obviously normally when you're taking pictures of people, say, outside in beautiful light, the sun is up here, isn't it, coming down, and so it doesn't look that great. So the first thing you can do is, if you get something like the YN560 or any extra flash, is that you can mount it on the hot shoe of the camera like this, and all of a sudden you can see we've got this difference between where the flash head is and where the lens is, so that's really, really good. But we can also do things like we can aim it upwards and bounce it off the ceiling, aim it to one side to bounce it off a wall. We can have it upright and use the little bounce card to bounce it that way. We've got a diffuser on the front to diffuse the light as well. So that's sort of the basics you can do. And then the next thing you can do with something like the YN560 is you can take it off the camera, and it has slave modes which enable it to work wirelessly without the need for anything like a pocket wizard or anything like that. But before we start going to that in a bit more detail, let's take a few steps backwards. So the YN560 Mark I, this is a manual flash, so there's no TTL, ETTL, there's no way for the camera to talk to the flash to tell it about exposure. Normally what happens is, when you're using the camera and you fire the flash, actually what happens is it's firing two flashes, one very fast after the other. The first one enables it to ascertain what the correct power of the flash should be, and then it fires it again. With the YN560 that's not going to happen. Now I understand, I haven't looked into it, but I think the YN560 Mark II does have TTL, so when it's on camera they do talk to each other. But these are still available on eBay and going very, very cheap. So it's a manual flash, and what that means is, when you turn it on, there we go, you can probably see here there's these row of buttons, no, row of lights, sorry, and we can turn the flash up or down. Now at full power there, the flash has something called a guide number of 58. So what that means in English is that if you divide the guide number by the distance to your subject, that will give you f-stop. So this flash at maximum power and maximum zoom, which I'll go into in a minute, has a guide number of 58. Let's call it 60. So what that means is that if your subject was, say, I don't know, 6 meters away, you would have to set your camera to get an acceptable exposure to 60 divided by 6, which is 10 or f11, something like that. So it's a very powerful flash. And then what you can do is you can then change it in I think it's in stop. So you go full power, and then you can go half power, quarter, eighth, 16th, etc. to fine tune the flash power. Now it does other things as well. You can go in and you can adjust them within that, and you can also change the beep and things like that when it's charged up. But that's the main things you really need to know about. The fact that with these sort of flashes you can adjust the power, because if you've got more than one flash and you want to balance them, you want to be able to change the power, and they recycle nice and fast as well. Now the other thing we mentioned was zoom. Now I've got a couple of YN460 Mark IIs, great little flash, you can adjust the power, but you can't adjust the zoom of the head. And what the zoom of the head means, that if you've got an old-fashioned flash, you've probably noticed it, the fact that you can physically move the head backwards and forwards, and what that does is it narrows down the beam of the flash, which means that it can fire further. And the 560 Mark II does that using this little button here, zoom, and you might be able to hear it. if I point it at the camera, you might just be able to see the inside of the flash head moving. And so that means when it's at its maximum zoom, which it is now at 105, again that's when you get the maximum distance, but obviously it's narrow. Whereas if you zoom it out to 24mm and you want to go even wider, say using something like an 18mm wide angle lens, what you could do is you pop out your diffuser and that would spread the light even further. We've got a fully adjustable head here, so it can flip backwards and go round for bouncing off ceilings and walls and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very versatile flash. And also, for your off-camera flash, we also have a couple of different slave modes. So on the back here we have the modes, and so we've got manual mode, which we talked about, where you put it on your camera and it will fire. If you're using it on something like a radio popper or some sort of wireless trigger, you would put it in that mode too. But then we've also got slave 1 and slave 2. And what these enable you to do is have wireless off-camera flash. Now, slave mode 1 is quite a simple mode, and what will happen then is when a flash goes off near it, the sensor picks it up and fires the flash, which is great for old-fashioned flashes that fire once, or say you're using this type of flash system, or you're using something like an old film camera flash. Modern flashes though, like the one pop-up flash on your camera and your compact camera, etc., as we said before, fire twice. So what you would then do is you go to slave mode 2. And in slave mode 2, what happens there is the camera looks out for 2 flashes. When the first flash happens, it doesn't do anything, but when the second flash happens, it fires it off. So that means you can use it along with the pop-up flash on your camera. So you're kind of using the pop-up flash as like a command unit to tell when this to go off. And then what you can do, if you're clever, you could also use your flash exposure compensation to turn down the power on your pop-up flash, so it's just acting like a trigger. So let's see if we can get that to work. You might see this, you might not. So I've turned the flash on. I'm going to turn down the power as well. I'll put it into slave 2 mode. So let's see what happens. Let's see if the flash, the on-camera flash, will fire that one. You might be able to see this, I don't know. Let's see what happens. There we go. Maybe you saw that, I don't know. So how cool is that? Very, very simple indeed. And as you can imagine, all of a sudden, you could have a really cheap multiple flash setup, because this fires, which triggers this, or you could have your 462 set to that as well. And I've used these flashes quite a lot now, and they're good. I mean, I'm very careful with them. The build quality might not be the best, and they're probably not the most durable flashes in the world, but I'm careful with them. I'll pack them away in their bags. In the box you get a nice little pocket to keep it in, and you get the little foot to put it on. I don't think they'd probably stand up to being dropped that much, but overall the output here seems very good, and the recycle time seems very good at all. So let's do one final kind of experiment. Let's put both flashes on. We'll put them both into slave 2 mode. There we go. Now, I don't know whether we're able to see, let's see if we can get them both to go off towards the camera, triggering them with my on-camera flash on my 350D. See what happens. Did they both go off? You might have seen that, I'm not sure, but it kind of gives you the idea of what's possible. You could have the 560 as your sort of main light, and you could use a 460 or another 560 as a fill, or as a hair, or as a backlight. And what can't be denied is that, if you're getting into Strobe off-camera flash, you need to have a flash where you can adjust the power, and the YN560 Mark 1 does this really simply, and the added extra of being able to zoom in and out means that you can focus that beam of light just where you want it. Right, well, I'm robnonphoto.com. That's been my quick review of the Yongnuo YN560 Mark 1 Speedlite. Thanks for watching.